exploring small moments of lasting impact. It's the Atomic Jolt podcast with your host, Martin Cartledge.
Hello, I am Martin Cartledge, and you are listening to the Atomic Jolt podcast. In today's episode, we have Mikel Howarth. Mikel is another really good friend of mine, and in this episode, he shares his love of skateboarding and how he got started with it and where it's led him and throughout his life. I hope you enjoy it. It's been like 16 years.
Like for over half our lives.
Whoa.
Which is crazy. That's amazing.
True. Yeah. So, we've been friends for a long time. I would try to introduce you, but I would probably be too wordy and have too many inside jokes. So how about you just tell people like the elevator pitch of Mikel?
Well, the elevator pitch of me. Wow, that's
no
hard
pressure.
hard to answer that. So my name is Mikel, and I grew up in Colorado Springs, as did Martin and a lot of our other friends. I am married. My wife, Val, and I have a couple dogs, and we have a couple cats, and we live currently in the Northwoods of Wisconsin, in the middle of nowhere, where we hang out. We've recently been learning to cook more. I enjoy skateboarding. I enjoy Star Wars. I enjoy Legos. Let's see. Ooh, the Dune movie just came out. I just saw that yesterday, and it changed my life. Martin and I haven't talked about it yet, but we probably shouldn't get into it here. But I love Dune too, and that's just on the forefront of my mind. There's the elevator pitch, and I don't really have social media except for LinkedIn, but I also don't use it. So
there you go. Big sci-fi fans.
Big sci-fi.
Sure.
We're both big sci-fi fans. Mm-hmm.
And Legos and Star Wars. Yeah, you did really well. You love sugar. Probably more than the average 31-year-old.
Yeah. I just had an entire bag of Haribo Happy Cola yesterday, actually. And I am drinking a cup of honey cinnamon coffee this morning, which I couldn't not get it because the spice in Dune supposedly tastes like cinnamon. So I was like, oh yeah, get myself some geriatric spice coffee. It's gonna be great.
Just so deliberate and thought out with everything you do. So put together.
Yeah, exactly. I'm also permanently late, and Martin is very punctual, and so I was pretty late.
Nah, it's all good. It had to be that way. So what do you do for work?
I didn't even put that in my little mini bio. Yeah, so I am a software developer, a web developer, and I work for T-Mobile, and I write a lot of JavaScript. We work on front-end code, work with a really fun team on a design system, and it's good stuff. It's nice. People probably don't want to hear a whole lot about that, though.
Wow, it's tech super popular these days.
That's
cool.
True. That's true.
So why are we here? We're talking about skateboarding, right?
Yes. Yeah, we're talking about skateboarding.
Cool.
Which is a broad topic, but
definitely. Let's go into it though. How long have you been skateboarding?
So I first picked up a skateboard when I was 8 years old. And I have probably taken off maybe, I would say 3 years on the whole, from when I was 8 until I'm 31 now, that I didn't really skate. It was probably about 3 years altogether. So I've been skating for a long time.
Yeah. And I have it in my notes. I don't want to jump ahead, but we will eventually talk about the skate scene in Minoqua, Wisconsin. So I'm excited to get to that eventually. Okay. So you're 8 years old. How did you get introduced to skateboarding?
So I got introduced to skateboarding by my brother. So my brother is 11 years older than me. So we had a kind of a different relationship between the two of us, where we never really were at odds or really fought, because he was almost kind of I guess an uncle isn't right, but he's somewhere between an uncle and a brother, a really, really young uncle, because we have such a gap between us. But so I really idolized him, obviously. And he was into Nirvana and Nine Inch Nails and skateboarding at a certain point in his life. And I'm really glad that I decided to look up to him at that moment, which was he was actually into really cool stuff. So I thought he was wicked into skateboarding. So I decided that I wanted to try skateboarding. So I would take one of his old skateboards out into the backyard. We had this this little small piece of concrete in our backyard in Colorado Springs, and I would just try to like ride around and do ollies, and the tail was like ground down to like a half an inch basically. Like the whole thing was just beat to shit. But I would I would just practice skateboarding, and I wanted to be like my brother. And that was also when I got into a lot of the music that I actually still like. So just trying to emulate him was kind of my initial introduction to it. And then I found out later that he didn't even really skateboard. I don't think he could ollie to save his life now.
So you were 8. So this is like the late 90s.
Yeah. This would have been about the time Phantom Menace was coming out. So it was a transformative time for our little selves. Yeah. Late 90s.
Okay,
Which
cool.
Is crazy. That is crazy to think about.
So what's your brother's name? Adam, right?
Adam. Mm-hmm. Yep.
So it sounds like he kind of rode this wave of like alternative culture that was kind of shifting, and skateboarding was just like coming into play, and it was like the thing to do. And so it sounds like he was more so like, okay, sure, I like Nine Inch Nails and skateboarding. Okay, like, I mean, does that sound like right?
Yeah, it totally does. You know, it's funny. I haven't really ever thought about it very much from his perspective, like about like what like his vibe was, because he kind of turned into like a bit of a goob like pretty quickly in his 20s probably, where, you know, he's wearing the collared shirts and he's got the corporate job and he's got the family and he's buying like decorations from Pottery Barn and stuff. So I guess I forget that he ever really truly had a grunge phase, which he kind of did. He had like the hair part down the middle with like the very Jonathan Taylor Thomas vibe, you know. Then he had like the windbreakers and like the whole thing. It was all very 90s. Yeah. And yeah, he did have some good music in there though, in that he had this like CD case that would go through. And yeah, that's where I found Stabbing Westward. Do you remember that band?
That sounds familiar.
Song that they have. It was like a knockoff industrial band. They had this, it was a super one-hit wonder. Man. Oh yeah, it's a Save Yourself song. It's like, I can't even save myself, so just save yourself. You know, and then it's like industrial like beats.
The 90s. I don't remember that, but that sounds like pretty 90s.
Yeah, it was bad. It was like worse than POD bad, which I know you love POD. You're going to get.
Oh, man. You come on the podcast and you just immediately throw shade on POD. No, it's cool, though.
But yeah, Third Eye Blind, okay. For sure.
So you're like ripping around on a skateboard when you're like 8 years old. Do you remember like what kind of skateboard it was? Like what deck? Or was it like a Walmart skateboard?
No. So it wasn't like the skateboards that didn't have concave. So it actually had concave. It was a real board, but it was very, very old. I think it was like yellow on the bottom, but it was so beat up you couldn't even see the graphics. So I don't even know what kind of deck it was. It was probably like an older Powell Peralta. It wasn't like the fish boards, and it wasn't like the old school cruisers. So it was like an actual, you know, double-ended regular skateboard. But I think it was probably a Powell Peralta.
So it was pretty legit.
Yeah, it was a real skateboard. It had independent trucks. It had like, I don't know what the wheels were tiny. They were just like barely bigger than the bearings. They've been ground down so much, but yeah, that was my first skateboard. Thanks for keeping us on track. I'm like singing stabbing westward. Like what's even happening?
Oh no, it's good.
Skateboarding.
I mean, it's good. Yeah, so it's cool that it was a legit skateboard, because I don't know about you, but I guess I do know about you now. But like my first skateboard was like, I'm pretty sure from Toys R Us, and it was one of those ones that was like wrapped in plastic, and it was a complete, technically heavy air quotes on complete. And it was like, at the time, I mean, inflation cost, but it was like not even expensive for the time. And it had like the lifetime warranty and all this really like weird, like, you know, packaging and verbiage around it. So it's cool that it was like something legit right out of the gate, because I mean, we'll get to it later, but skateboarders are very opinionated, low key, sometimes not low key, about like being legit and being a poser or being whatever.
Oh yeah.
Kind of goes into the like the whole counterculture movement too. But so it's a good segue, because I also want to talk about music, because I know that you're pretty influenced by it, and it's pretty typical for skateboarding, because at least for punk music, rock music, rap, hip hop, whatever you want to call it, skateboarding kind of brought a lot of these artists to the foreground too. So yeah, I mean, outside of that band that you were just singing, what kind of bands did you think you kind of discovered through skateboarding?
Oh, bands I discovered through skateboarding. So I know it's kind of cliche to say this, but I do think Tony Hawk's Pro Skater played a big role in like a lot of my music taste and things that I got into back in the day, as well as skate videos too. Because I think that like there's a lot of music that comes through in skate videos, like especially when they choose like kind of weird songs. Like I feel like the Baker videos did this a lot, where it's like stuff you wouldn't normally listen to, where you're like, oh, maybe I do want to go listen to like blues now, because you like associate it with something you love so much. So it like really, I feel like it's skateboarding has a lot of power to like change people's taste, because people are so invested in skateboarding itself. So if somebody puts Tribe Called Quest on their skate video, like they're not gonna be able to do like remove a Tribe Called Quest from something they love so much, so they're going to be into it, which I think happened to me with a lot of bands. But like I think Pennywise, NoFX, like a lot of those older, like earlier punk bands. I think the old punk fans would probably call those guys pre-pop punk, but that kind of stuff was something I got into from there. I never really got into the hip hop side of things very much, but because I mean I know you were playing Tony Hawk at the same time. Like what music did you take into your life out of those games and out of skateboarding in general? I'm curious.
Yeah, no, I'm gonna try and limit myself because I could ramble on this. But first thing that comes to mind is like Del Funk, the Homo Sapien or whatever.
Oh yeah,
that dude. Which is like also like forks off into Tribe Called Quest. But then so that's like Tony Hawk Pro Skater time. That was like the main hip hop influence that kind of like forked off and introduced me to a lot of stuff. But if we're talking skate videos, which was also like a really big part of like my whole like skateboarding interest as well, was probably the girl video, because they had a bunch of just hip hop in that in general. I can't really recall. Oh, there was an artist called Fat Lip. I remember that.
Yeah.
So it stuck because it was also a Sum 41 song. So yeah, I mean, girl, like that Yeah Right video, and Tony Hawk Pro Skater. Yeah. Those two for sure.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. Do you remember that skate video that Transworld Skateboarding did called First Love? Did you ever see that one?
Yeah.
Man, that one was so good. And they had like the crazy slow-mo cinematography at the beginning. I feel like the music in that one was really great too. But
yeah, I wonder why skateboarding and good music just kind of it became this pretty organic like marriage of the two.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so you're listening to like NoFX when you're like 8 years old, or did that happen like naturally as you?
No, that happened later.
So sure, yeah, let's fill the gap. So
okay,
you're skateboarding with your brother. You're 8 years old, so you're just like, okay, this is cool. My brother's doing it. Your brother falls out of it slowly. What was the time where you were like, you kind of like solidified the interest for yourself, and you were like, I want to do this. Like, it's a hobby of mine. Like, I want to pursue it.
Yeah. Okay. So I was thinking about this yesterday to try to really boil down to the atomic jolt, as it were. And so there's a couple of things that happened. One of them was a little slower, and one of them is a moment I can remember pretty distinctly that I think is that moment for me. But the first one, the slower boil, was kind of as my friends started really getting into sports when you're that age and you're in middle school, elementary school, and they're playing soccer, they're playing basketball, they're playing, I don't think we had football yet, but all the team sports at school, like I played some of them. I played a little bit of basketball. I played a little bit of soccer. I did actually enjoy baseball, but none of them like really stuck with me that much. Like I wasn't super into sports in general. And like, I didn't have like a super angsty attitude about it at that point in time yet. They just didn't resonate with me. So I think that like the difference of skateboarding, how it's something where it's just so different from a team sport, because like every time, like all the successes you arrive at in skateboarding are completely something that you did yourself, and all of your failures, you have no one to blame but yourself as well. So I think I really enjoyed kind of like the punishing and rewarding aspects of skateboarding, in the sense that it's like a completely self-made thing, and you're not competing with anyone except for yourself. And when you go and skate with your friends and other people, like you're there to encourage each other. Like even when you're competing in a game of skate or whatever, it's, you're doing a trick and then your friend does a trick, and they skate fakie a lot more than you do. So then you have to push yourself to learn fakie more and do those things. So like every time your friend lands a trick that's like really hard and something you can't do, you don't get like pissed off like you do in a sports game when you lose and you hate the other team. It's like you're proud of your friend because you're like, damn, that was awesome, like good work. And I think that like the blend of camaraderie mixed with like self discipline to like do it yourself is what really drew me into it. And obviously I didn't have all those things like worked out in my head at the time when I was really little, but I think that kind of started forming my interests at that point. And I did enjoy being able to do it by myself. Like I like that you don't have to wait for practice to go out on the field and play. Like you just pick up your skateboard, you find literally more than 2 feet by 2 feet of concrete and you can skate. And it's awesome. And there's no barrier to entry. Anyone can do it. Yeah, and it's just like the most rewarding thing that I had ever found in my life. And I really enjoyed it. So that's like the slower build, I think, is kind of, there's a fork in the road for a lot of people who get into skateboarding, I think, where it's like team sports and then like solo sports, and skateboarding kind of drives that. And also the culture of it, like if you do get into the music and like you get into the styles and those kind of things, like really kind of pushes you further into that world, and also further away from the team sports world. At least for me, it did, like at that age. But the moment, like the atomic jolt, I think for me was, I remember riding in the back of my mom's car. I was probably like nine or 10 at this point. So I had practiced skateboarding a little bit, but like I hadn't been watching any Tony Hawk's trick tips or anything like that. So I didn't really know what I was doing. I was just kind of trying to make it happen. So I didn't really know anything, but I remember riding in the back of the car. My mom drove this car called a Sterling. It was this old red car. And we were driving down the road in Colorado Springs, and I looked out the window and I remember seeing this teenage dude like riding a skateboard down the sidewalk, and he was approaching like a street, and I saw him like kind of do a little manual and like hop off the curb and then land on the road and like ride up to the other curb, and he was going pretty fast, and then he just pops an ollie up the other curb and just keeps going on the sidewalk, and he just made it all look so effortless and casual, and like he was just a part of his skateboard. And it was like the way that he brought something that isn't attached to his feet with him to get up over that curb, and like just the movement was so fluid and it just looks so cool. Like I just like that. I just remember thinking like, I want to be able to do that. I was like, that's awesome. That's the coolest thing I've ever seen. And that, I think that really drove home like my desire to like learn these things. And then by the time I figured out how to really ollie like high enough to do something like that, I was ecstatic. I was like, this is amazing. This is so cool. And every time I ollie up a curb, I still sometimes think about that, about that dude doing it. I'm like, man, I'm living my dream, ollieing up curbs.
Yeah, it's crazy that those small things can like really like resonate with you this long. Was this in Colorado Springs, I assume?
Yep. Yeah, this was in the Springs. I don't remember where, but
sure. I wonder if that guy still lives like around that area, and if he still is like hitting that spot, if he does sessions there still.
Right, yeah, just ollieing up a curb. Because I had no idea. I was just like watching in awe.
Sure. So, I mean, you're like 9 or 10. You're probably starting to make like friends, and I know you have a lot of friends in the Springs. I mean, you like grew up there, spent most of your life there. And were your friends into skateboarding, or were you kind of the one that brought it into the friend group?
So most of my friends were not super into skateboarding, like as a sport that they participated in. But again, I know you really can't separate skateboarding in the 90s, at least in my life, from Tony Hawk's Pro Skater. But all of our friends that played video games and hung out, like we all played those games together. So I think that there was like a mutual love of skateboarding, which is something that the world owes to Tony Hawk. Like it's one of the coolest things that he did by making those games. Like so many people got into skateboarding just because of those games. And like my friends thought skateboarding was cool because they played those video games, which I don't know if that would have been the case otherwise. So, I mean, like Drew and Andrew and John Rodvold, like all these people that, we all know together, they all liked it, but didn't actively participate in it. So for me, I didn't actually end up starting to skate with people until I was like 13 or 14. And that was when I met Dan Vasquez, who was one of my best friends in like middle school and high school. And we skateboarded a lot together. And I remember that Dan just wanted to learn how to skate. He like, I think he got into the culture side of it first. So he was into the music and like, he introduced me to a lot of bands and stuff too, that were kind of a part of that world. But yeah, he got into that culture side. And then I think he was like, man, like you kind of know how to skateboard, like you should teach me how to do it. And then we just started skating together. Yeah. And so we were, young teenagers when that happened, but there was a bit of a gap where it was just us hanging out, playing video games. Like I wasn't like into the world of skateboarding quite yet until Dan came along.
Sure. So it sounds like Dan kind of drew you into the more like the culture side of it, and outside of like the actual like active skateboarding. I mean, did that come from, I mean, what parts of it did he introduce you to? Was it like the skate videos? Was it the magazines? Was it all of it, like kind of at once? Or like what kind of stuff was he into that you were like, oh, this is sick?
Yeah, that's a good question. I hadn't actually really dug into that. And I think you're right. I think at the time I wanted to like take credit for getting into these things on my own, but I really do think that it was pretty much all of him that made me realize there's like this whole world. Like if you can go to the skate shop and you can buy the magazines, you can get subscriptions and like buy the stickers and talk to the people and get to know everybody like around. Like I think that he was kind of the driving factor for that. So yeah, I think I'm gonna probably credit him with most all of that. And punk music too. Like I actually didn't really like punk that much before Dan came along, and I remember, I don't know what I had weird rules about music I listened to, but I just had a crappy attitude in general. So yeah, Dan was pretty instrumental in like my taste at that time for sure.
So do you think you got into this music just because it was like you met a friend that had like similar interests, and so you kind of like morphed into it? Like it's kind of like a group kind of a thing. Like, oh, it's like a friend, like we have this common ground. I'm just gonna like give this more credence than I normally would because like this person seems to get it? Or do you think you like thoroughly were like, oh, I'm exposed to this is kind of new and different, and I like it, and it's kind of like synonymous with skateboarding culture? So, or is it a combination?
I think it was a combination, but I think it was more just that it was new and different, because more than anything, Dan and I like would get, we would sit down and, pick up a skate video and then like go to, one of our parents' houses and like pop it in and watch it together. And a lot of that discovery happened like for both of us at the same time. So it was like, holy shit, like this band is crazy. Like, could you believe that trick? Like, those experiences were shared. So I think we kind of were able to explore this whole new world together and get into different things, like kind of on our own, where I got more into, I think eventually branched off to more of like the pop punk and the hardcore side of things. And he went more deep into like the like stoner grunge, like, or old punk stuff. So we kind of found our own little niches within the world, but it was mostly a discovery like together, I think.
Yeah. Well, were there any more cases that you met someone that kind of like panned out like Dan? Because you're like in high school. So what happens like later on? Is it just you and Dan, or like through that kind of like hanging out at skate parks, going to like skate shops? I imagine that the circle probably grows a little bit. Is there anyone else that you kind of met that became like a good friend, but also skateboarded and wasn't just like a fan of like Tony Hawk and like video games?
Yeah, absolutely. So we had met a few people. We went to the Briargate skate park, which is like by the YMCA up there, which is like an absolute piece of crap. But I remember thinking that it was just like glorious at the time. So we made some friends up there. Some people that I didn't get super close with, but I like knew casually. Like whenever I'd go to the skate park, I'd skate with them and say hi. But the person that I really became super close with is Mike Searle, who I met also kind of through, our friendship was really forged through skateboarding as well, which is awesome, which is where you come into the picture as well, which is good. And that was like, I don't know, when did I meet Mike? What were we, 15? I guess we were 15 because I met you when we were 15.
Yes, I also know Mike. You've been friends with him for like a super long time. Also, tell me about, how you guys met, because I know a lot of times first impressions with Mike are interesting. If you ever listen to this, Mike, sorry.
Yeah, totally. Oh yeah. So we let's see, I'm 15. I'm like full bore into the like I'm cooler than everybody asshole 15-year-old phase. I had this hoodie, this like Beetlejuice-esque hoodie that was like these like black and white stripes. It was like mystery skateboards, and I was obsessed with like checkerboards and like kind of ska, but like the more emo side of ska. My email address was checkeredskaterboy@yahoo.com. I was like,
send him an email.
It was embarrassing. I was balls deep in it though. I had like this like wannabe Misfits haircut with like this little like wonky curl that I like gel down, but it like my hair was it was an embarrassing time. But yeah, it was around then. And I remember that through another mutual friend of ours, there was this girl named Sierra, and I had this huge crush on Sierra that we knew through Allie. And I remember talking to her and like finding out that she had this huge crush on this other guy named Mike, and she really didn't like me at all. So she liked Mike, and through it was I guess it was Tag, which is like this New Life church group thing that we would all go to just so we could hang out. And through Tag, I met Mike, and then like we kind of had this like goofy kind of like face off where like I initially was like just primed to not like him because I was like, oh, like Sierra likes you. What's so great about this dude? And then and then we met and we talked, and it was like a lot of posturing. And then like it was like, oh, you skate, bro? Like, yeah, dude. Like we should go skate sometime. And just like acted all cool. I was like, all right, dude, whatever. I was like, oh, I bet he's shitty. Like I bet I'm better than he is. Like, so we agreed to go skateboarding. So like cool dudes, our parents dropped us off at this skate spot outside of where Mike's dad worked. We called it the Buttery Ledge. And it was just this 45-degree angle of concrete that had like a waxed top edge that was like in front of this planter next to this like old abandoned bank building next to the mall up at Chapel Hills, which you know what I'm talking about. You've been over there, Martin, yep. Right? Oh man. So we skated this Buttery Ledge, and like that, like everything, all of this like stupid like rivalry kind of dissolved. And I think I was the only one that actually saw the rivalry because Mike definitely won that whole thing. But we skated together, and like all that fell away, and like we just became friends like instantly, like skating that spot. And we just started skateboarding together a bunch, and like it was great. It was awesome. And then I got to meet all you guys, and our friend group grew, and then you and I traded those Star Wars belts. Remember that? When I gave you
we'll get into it. So who's the better skateboarder, you or Mike?
Mike is better than I am. It pains me to admit, but Mike
is
definitely
in history forever.
I know he's put more work into it consistently over the years, and he skates switch a lot better than I am, and he does have his fakie game is on point, and he kills me on tranny as well. The mini ramps, I can't shred like he can.
So Mike is 30, you're 31. Do you think if you both played a game of skate right now, Mike would still win?
Yeah, he would. If we were playing flat, it would be, yeah, I think Mike would probably win. Sometimes I feel like the like a nollie 360 shove it and then a fakie 360 shove it and a 360 shove it. I feel cheated sometimes, but yeah, he would definitely win. If we had a box, it might be a little closer. And if we had a rail, I think I might be able to beat him more regularly if we had a small rail. So
sure. So speaking of Mike, for people listening, Mike has 2 kids, and he's younger than us, which is pretty bizarre, because we don't have kids yet.
Not yet.
And so, kind of thinking about that, if you eventually have kids, is that going to be something that you introduce to them, skateboarding, or are you just going to kind of be like, if they get asked about it, you'll tell them, or are you going to kind of be like, this is really cool?
Yeah, I definitely want to introduce my kids to skateboarding. I think that like with all the things that I enjoy, I don't want to push anything on my kids, my future non-existent kids. I'd rather just continue to enjoy those things myself and like spend the time, getting better and skateboarding and doing those things. And ideally, if your kids like you even a little bit, they'll be curious about those kind of things. And I'd like for them to come to it and be like, hey, like, let's skateboard, like, can you teach me how to do that? And I guess before they can make those decisions, like, sure, yeah, totally, like ride them around on a little skateboard, hold their hands, like that kind of stuff. I think that'd be super fun. I think skateboarding it's super valuable. I think it's like an amazing tool for learning about life and persistence and like pain and overcoming those things. And I think that like other sports can teach those things as well, and other lessons, about like teamwork and camaraderie. But I do think that skateboarding has some really unique things to teach to people. And I think it's important. I think it's valuable for sure. Yeah. So like just outside of being cool, I think that like anyone could really get a lot out of it for sure. So yeah, I'd love for my kids to skate.
Yeah, absolutely. That is actually what I was going to kind of transition to and build off of was, so if you if you want to try and sell it to your kids outside of like, it's just cool. What other things outside of, teaching you persistence, patience, things like that? Is there anything else that, is kind of like a pillar, like underlying thing of like a life lesson you could kind of stitch into skateboarding to show your kids?
To try to get them into it, or to like talk to them after they were already into skateboarding?
No, just something that maybe it isn't even you'd have to like kind of say explicitly, but a lesson that you learned that you thought was really valuable, maybe unexpected, that you're like, oh, that could be cool if my kids get into skateboarding, or if they like it, because there's chances are that they'll learn this too. Like you mentioned, like perseverance, like, just like sticking to something, being committed, things like that, that you can bring outside of skateboarding. They're kind of applicable anywhere.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. I think the persistence thing like definitely stands out to me, and kind of like the mental discipline of trying something, and like also overcoming fear, because I think fear is like a inherent part of skateboarding, and I think that's why it's quote unquote cool. I think most things that are cool have a danger associated with them, and like some kind of risk to your personal body. And skateboarding has that, and I think that overcoming fears to like accomplish something, even if it's a kickflip, like if you're trying to do a kickflip, it's something that you can hurt yourself doing. I mean, Drew broke his wrist like trying to do a manual, so skateboards can be dangerous. And I think that you're afraid you're going to fall, you're going to land primo, you're going to shoot out, you're going to land on your tailbone, whatever. So like overcoming that fear enough to actually commit to the trick that you're trying to do. And in skateboarding, when people say you need to commit to it, like you can try a trick and then like kind of kick the board away from you, where you're kind of testing the water to see if the motions are going to work, and if what you're doing, is sound physics wise. But you're really not at any risk, because you're pushing it away. The wheels aren't underneath you. You're not going to hurt yourself. And there's a moment that switches between that kind of like testing the waters and that trial and error, to the point where you're like, I think I understand what I need to do. And the only thing I need to get past to actually make this happen is I need to like commit to actually completing the trick and landing on the grip tape. And, either I land it, or I'm probably going to shoot out and actually eat it. And that moment, I think, is a really valuable thing to do. It's just something that you're persevering to the point where you've learned enough, and then you push yourself beyond this point of fear to say, okay, like I'm afraid, but I know I can do it, and if I put myself wholly into this endeavor, like I can make it happen. And I think that lessons like that are seemingly like really small, but you do that so many times when you're skating and you're learning to skate and you're getting better, and you decide to learn a new trick, or you try to take a trick bigger or something like that. It's a constant process of doing that over and over and over and over and over again. And I think that kind of molds your brain like into this place where you realize that if something is difficult, like you just need to keep working at it. Like if you chip away and you get better each time, and you commit and you take risks and you push yourself farther than you ever have before, that you will succeed at it. Like it's almost inevitable if you're willing to put like effort in like regularly and constantly, and be willing to like hurt yourself to like get further. And I think that just makes life easier. If you approach life with that kind of attitude, and you don't think that things are going to get handed to you, and you don't think it's going to be super easy, like you're going to have a better time, I think.
Yeah, no, that sounds good to me. That's pretty insightful. Do you think, you're like skating through your high school years, you've like met Mike, you're friends with Dan, I assume you're getting better at skateboarding, you're probably taking it more seriously.
Yeah.
Do you think your parents were ever like, oh, I think Michael will want to do this for a career? Do you think they were excited about that? Did you voice anything to them about, oh yeah, that's what I want to do after high school, I just want to do this for a living? Or did you always kind of were like, it'll probably just be a hobby and I'll do something else?
So I don't think I ever like explicitly voiced that to my parents. I think that skateboarding was something that kind of felt like my own, and something separate from, very, very much away from your parents. So I don't think I shared many things about skateboarding with them. Not purposefully. It just was something that was my own. And I did want to become a pro skater, and I really thought I was going to become a pro skater. And I egotistically thought I had it in me. which I just didn't realize I would have had to work 100 times as hard to ever get there. But yeah, I did think I was going to be able to go pro someday. I remember Dan and I one time at my mom's house, we recorded this video on this crappy camcorder that it wasn't a sponsor me video. It was an adopt me video that we tried to send to Rodney Mullen. Because we were both super angsty about our parents, and like my parents were getting divorced. We were like, "Oh, like, don't you wish Rodney Mullen was our dad?" And like, put together this super cringy video that was like, "This is our adopt me video for Rodney Mullen. Like, my parents are bad, blah 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 blah." And then it's like us failing at these super simple tricks on this rail on this awful camcorder. It's like VHS.
It's like you're reading my mind. I have a note here for sponsor me tape, but I'm literally going to scratch it out now and put adopt me tape. I've never heard that before.
Yeah. So, and we did try to put together sponsor me tapes too, which they were trash. Like they were very, very, very bad. No one would have sponsored us.
Yeah. Tales old as time. I feel like it's a rarity to get a good sponsor me tape. Our lives probably would have been pretty different. So, I mean, this inspiration and this drive to be professional had to come from somewhere. I mean, what skateboarders did you look up to and kind of try and emulate? I'm also curious, outside of technical, because I feel like, technically sound professional skateboarders are kind of a dime a dozen in their own right, but skateboarders that kind of have a kind of unique, cool personality, at least like impressionable teenagers, are more rare. I mean, who do you look up to?
So I was actually planning on talking about this way more than we did, but Jamie Thomas is my all-time absolute favorite skateboarder ever, which and he is the person that I looked up to the most since I was a little kid. I loved him. I also liked Corey Duffel and Dustin Dolan and like a lot of the Baker team, a lot of the Zero History, Fallen, all those dudes, Eric Costin, like you said, the girl team, the chocolate teams, some people on Lakai. But Jamie Thomas and Zero Skateboards and like the whole black box distribution like group was definitely the peeps that I looked up to the most. Like I thought they were awesome. And something about Jamie Thomas, like the way he just like carries himself and the way that he skates and the way that he talks is just like really inspiring. And he's also one of those skaters that like your parents like. So it's like, oh, this Jamie Thomas guys, he's teaching great values to these kids through skateboarding. Like what a great guy. which made it easier too to like buy stuff with skulls on it.
Right. Because he started Zero, right?
He did start Zero. Yeah.
Yeah, that's like very Sid from Toy Story vibes, but it's very cool. Yeah. Isn't that the inspiration from their design?
Yeah. The skull is the skull from the T-shirt that Sid wears, which is awesome.
That's amazing.
And actually, the other one, like the Zero font with like the border outline. That is, and then it has like a star. I think it's like Zero and then the star.
Yep.
That's actually from a T-shirt that Billy Corgan wore at a Smashing Pumpkins concert, like way back in the day. And they just stole that too and turned it into their brand as well.
Yeah. So through like you're really looking up to Jamie Thomas, did that kind of transfer over to you being like a low-key, really big Toy Story fan too?
Dude, no, I didn't find out about that Toy Story connection until like a year and a half ago, and it blew my mind. I couldn't believe it. I am a big Toy Story fan, but man, that was awesome. Yeah, it was very cool. That was a good moment.
Yeah.
Just good old Sid.
Sure. So after high school, did you ever get pressure to find like a real job, heavy air quotes? Where did the skateboard land after you graduated high school and you kind of had to be an adult?
So rewinding a tiny bit before we graduated from high school. So when I was 17 and Dan was 17 and we were in high school and Dan was smoking a lot of weed and his parents were like, you got to stop smoking weed. Like, we're going to start drug testing you. Also, to put in a little context, very conservative Christian school, conservative Christian town, the whole nine. So Dan smoking weed was a pretty big deal for his family. They were pretty pissed. So they were like, we're going to start drug testing you. If you fail your drug test, we're going to send you to Utah for rehab. Like, you got to get over this, blah, 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 blah. And he was like, all right, whatever. He hated that. But he told me, he was like, dude, he's like, okay. He's like, we need to go to California until we turn 18 because I'm definitely going to fail this drug test that's coming up, and I do not want to live in Utah. And this was like at lunch in our junior year of high school. And I just remember being like, dude, you're such an idiot. Like, no, like, what are you talking about? That was my reaction at like 8:30 in the morning. And then he just wore me down all day. And he eventually somehow just convinced me to say yes. And by like 3:30 p.m. when school's letting out, I was like, all right, dude, I guess we're doing this. We sold his Xbox, took the Geo Metro, got our Beavis and Butthead plush doll, got our skateboards, got a bunch of weed that he bought, got in the Geo Metro, and we just left. We just left to go to California until we turned 18. And took our skateboards. And that's really where we thought that those pro skateboard careers were going to take off. We went to like Santa Monica, and like obviously we went to Southern California, which is where you go to become a pro skateboarder naturally. So we hit some skate parks down there. We lived out of a Geo Metro for a week until we got busted for speeding in a 30-mile-an-hour zone. And our parents reported us as missing people. We were like underage. So we went to juvie for a couple nights, and our parents picked us up, took our asses back to Colorado. And then Dan dropped out of high school at that point. He was like, his parents were kind of like, all right, like, I guess if you're willing to be this drastic, then we're just going to kind of be more hands off. So they just let him drop out of high school. He got his GED, started working with his dad, doing some construction things. And then I went back to school, and my dad had the frugal conservative foresight to withdraw me from all of my classes. Like he actually unenrolled me from my high school like the day I left to save money. And then when I got back, he re-enrolled me. So I just got to jump back into the same point. But because I was actually technically a new student, I didn't have to make up any work for the last like 2 weeks that I'd missed. So I really, really skated by, no pun intended, that whole entire situation. And then, graduated with not so flying colors from high school. But I think, sorry, to answer your question was skateboarding after high school. So like after high school ended, I think that moment I realized like, okay, I'm probably not going to become a professional skateboarder. And yeah, I think from there on, it was just something that I did just for fun. Like it was just a part of me. Like, I think that's when skateboarding became the most fun, probably, is when you kind of let go of this like expectation that you need to do a certain thing or be a certain way or skate like somebody. That's when it's probably the most fun. Like I love skateboarding so much, even now. Like I suck ass, but it's just a cathartic, great part of life,
So at that point, when all of that stuff happened, like an episode of Cops happened in real life on a juvenile level for you and Dan Vasquez. That's when you realized, okay, I'm like kind of throwing in the towel. I just kind of want to have fun. I don't want to stop doing this just because I'm like air quote like an adult now. Mm-hmm. But I just kind of want to treat it as like a thing I just enjoy. It seems like a healthy move, rather than to just hold on to, this like lofty ambition of becoming pro at,
right.
18, in Colorado Springs, which is probably not the hottest, spot for scouts or teams or probably not a lot of pro trips in Colorado Springs.
Yep.
So what happens after that? So you're in Minoqua now, and you're still skateboarding. How big is Minoqua? How many people are in
Minoqua? Is 5,000 people large. It's a super tiny town. It doesn't have a whole lot of anything going on. There's a lot of ice fishing. There's a lot of ATVing. There's a lot of Republicans. There's a lot of snowmobiles. There's a lot of these things called muskie shops. I don't even know what it is. I think it's a type of fish. It's definitely not our vibe, but it's really pretty. I mean, you've been up here. It's like the trees, like the scenery and stuff is awesome, but there's just not a whole lot of culture that we're into. Like Friday night fish fries is like, that really sums up the entire culture up here. So,
but you still skateboard up there.
Yeah? I do. Yeah. No, I'm being harsh on it. There's a lot of things we really love about it. And there is a skate park here, which is mind blowing. It's not like a concrete, like planned out park. It's just one of those prefabricated, like, the wood and like the rubbery kind of skate park surface stuff on there. And it's pretty crappy, but it's got a couple rails, one of the rails fell out of the ground the other day, but it's pretty fun. There's a lot of kids that skate there. By a lot, I mean like 10 or so, which is a pretty high percentage of Minoqua. But they're, most of them are in high school. And I was actually skating there the other day, and this kid who's like, I think he was 16. He like him and I were kind of just skating back and forth. Like we weren't really skating together or talking a ton, but he came up to me at one point and he's like, hey man, yeah. He's like, how long you been skateboarding for? Like, this is awesome. And I was like, damn. And I was like, way too long. Like 17 years. I can't believe that's the case. I was like, I should be way better than I am. But he's like, man, that's awesome. He's like, how old are you? If you don't mind me asking. I was like, oh yeah, I'm 30. This is like a while back. And like, he's like, wow. He's like, you must have lived a good life. I remember being like, what? He just like literally thought, yeah, I was like, yeah, man. Like, we, traveled, seen a lot of things, like done a lot of stuff. Like, sure. He didn't even realize he's just like, he just thinks I'm like, my life is over because I'm 30. I'm at the skate park. So I'm officially, what's up?
No, do you feel like that's like a full circle? Like you're meeting your 15 or 16-year-old self. Do you think when you were 15 or 16, you would have felt the same way if you ran into someone that was 30 at a skate park?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, totally. And I was thinking about that too, because there was another group of kids that came to the skate park that like, there's probably 4 of them. And it reminded me so much of our friend group, like back in high school or even middle school, I guess, or like freshman year with Drew and J-Rod and everybody. Because it was this one kid who was like decent. He was like, all right. He was pretty good at skating. You could tell that he was like invested in it. And then he had a few friends. One of them was like on a scooter. And then the other one was like on this crappy little bike. And they're just kind of hanging out in the skate park with the kid who skates. And he was like, oh, check this out. Check this out. I was like, man, it just like really took me back to like exactly how life was back in the day, which is fun. And it's crazy to think how long ago that was. So yeah, I would definitely have looked at somebody who was 31 at a skate park and be like, damn, that's an old man. But I also really wanted to hopefully still skate when I was that age. So hopefully my little asshole 16-year-old self would be proud that I'm still skating at 31.
Yeah, no, I mean, you're still doing it. That's I mean, yeah, you really, really like it. You made it. You've led a good life, as that 16-year-old Minoqua skater, local skater would say. So I'm gonna like transition into like kind of like speed round of questions. Don't feel like you need to answer them in like 5 seconds. But there's a couple things that I'm just curious about, and hopefully people are curious about too. So way back, like 15, 20 minutes ago, you talked about overcoming fear when you're skateboarding, and like there's like that moment of like hesitation where you break through and you're like, okay, I got this, and like that just builds confidence. What was probably like, you could think, if you remember that first time you were like broke through that, or like what was the most scared you were trying to do a trick, and what was the trick?
Okay, cool. Yeah, that's a good question. I'd probably go with, I think it'd be easier to remember the most scared I've been trying to do a trick.
Yeah.
So I do remember visiting my grandma when I was probably 16 in Iowa, in Bloomfield, Iowa. And I would just take my skateboard and go off and like find different spots to skate like pretty much every afternoon. And I remember going and finding this like 10-stair handrail that was like super, super steep. It was like off the edge of this like loading dock. This was a really steep 10-stair handrail that had like a little bit of a sidewalk running up to it, and then asphalt like in a loading bay at the bottom area. And I remember trying to board slide that. And that was really scary because when you're doing like a handrail or any kind of, death rail that has like a slant to it, then you have to like really lean your body forward a ton so that your momentum like going down the rail doesn't throw you back and like shoot out. So that one was fun. It's always the first try that's like really scary, where you're trying to actually like, you have to get over that hump. To get over is a lot bigger when you're doing a bigger trick like that. So when you're finally like, okay, I'm gonna go for it, and you actually get on the rail, and then you kick your skateboard out, and you fall on your feet and then like roll on the ground, and like that moment when you get up and you're like, okay, it's not as bad as I thought it was gonna be. Like I have a feel for like how your body flies through the air when you're doing this trick, and then you continue working on it like over and over again. That trick was really fun.
What was the trick?
It was just a board slide. It was lame, but
did you land it?
I did land it. Yeah. I actually have that trick on video because a friend of mine was out visiting too at that time. Like I probably twisted his arm and forced him to record that. So.
That's awesome. Okay. So favorite skateboarder, Jamie Thomas.
Uh-huh.
You you've also mentioned like Dustin Dollin, Corey Duffel, all awesome skateboarders. Favorite skate video?
Favorite skate video is probably Dying to Live from Zero.
Cool. This might be a slam dunk, but favorite skateboard company?
Favorite skateboard company is going to be Zero. Yeah, I'm pretty much a one-trick pony when it comes to that. I do love them.
Cool. What was your first like kind of skate setup, like deck, wheels, trucks? Do you remember?
My first like semi-legit setup was probably a BC Blank, I think. Which I guess doesn't totally count because it's not a pro, but I do remember I had a BC Blank that I really loved. That had independent trucks, Spitfire wheels. It had Bones bearings, and I think that kind of like set my tastes for future skateboard companies in motion, because I still mostly prefer. I've only come around to like Thunder trucks after like skating independent for like 10 years.
So was this at the BC Surf and Sport, like that skate shop?
Yeah. Sorry, I forget. Everybody's not going to know what BC is. Yeah, BC Surf and Sport, Colorado Springs skate shop. I guess it's a chain technically. I think there's one in Denver, right?
Yeah, I know of one. There's one in Broomfield.
Okay.
There's probably more.
Yeah.
What's your favorite skate shop?
Favorite skate shop? My favorite skate shop at this point is probably 303 Boards in Denver. They're fantastic. They have the coolest like shop boards. They hire all these different artists that like have worked on different actual actual decks for different companies to like do the artwork and stuff. And they actually partnered with Toy Machine for their most recent run of shop decks, which is crazy. It's like a 303 Boards X Time Toy Machine, and they know Ed Templeton and stuff. So their shop is really dope. I like that, and the people are just super, super nice. 303 Boards in Denver is my favorite.
Cool. Well, that's an easy segue into like what's stuff that you want to share with people, like the plug section, things that you're doing, things you really like, things you would want people to know about, just in general or about skateboarding. So 303 Boards is on there. What else?
Yeah. 303 Boards in the plug section. My plug sections are generally not like normal things like skateboarding stuff. The Vitamix blender is definitely on my plug section. It is the best blender in the world. It'll blend anything. It's fantastic. Like we used to have this crappy Ninja blender, and we make our smoothies in it, and like the little chunks of ice were just always ever present, and you just crunch on them when you're drinking your smoothie. Couldn't get rid of them no matter what you did. And we got this Vitamix blender. Holy crap, it's like beyond Orange Julius. You can make peanut butter in it, like shit you not. It's awesome. So we bought a Vitamix, life changing. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
What else? I'm like looking.
Anything you're working on? Any projects?
Always, yes. I do like working in my workshop and building things for fun. DeWalt. I've really liked DeWalt tools. Best brand out there. Yeah, I don't really have any plugs, and I'm not really on social media very much, so that's it.
303 Boards, Vitamix, and DeWalt. You heard it here.
Yeah, you wait. Your check is in the mail from those companies.
Probably the most unique plug section you will ever hear, but that is on brand. Thanks for Michael. Thanks for talking and sharing your story and plugging Vitamix and DeWalt.
Dude, thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's been fun.
Absolutely.
Big thank you again to Mikel Howarth for being on the podcast. It was super fun catching up and talking a whole lot about skateboarding and his story with it. If you enjoyed the show and you're interested in supporting the show a little bit more, you can leave us a review on the podcast platform of your choice. If the podcast platform of your choice doesn't have reviews, you can follow us. That's probably the best way to support. If you're on social media and you're interested in following us on that, you can find us on Twitter and Instagram at Atomic Jolt Pod. That's Atomic Jolt Pod. Thank you so much again for listening, and we'll see you next time.